Okay, cleaning the crankshaft out, so I've got a bit of brake cleaner. I'm just going to spray it down. Just check I'm on camera. Yeah, just spray it down the oilways where the grub screws are going to go. 3. For some reason, it says in the manual, in the parts catalogue, that there are 4 of these grub screws. There's not. There's only 3. I think we've talked about this before. That the way the drillings are, obviously this is a 3-cylinder engine, and that there are 2 inlets for the oil to go in, and that means that through the main bearings. That means that one bearing, then the oil then goes to 2 big ends, and the other main bearing, the oil then goes to 1 big end. So obviously that's not even. I think we can all work that one out. So what you can do, and I think racing bikes sometimes do this, you can actually drill an extra oilway so that you've got one main bearing feeding 2 and the other main bearing feeding 2. But I mean, I think they only do that on real race bikes. You don't need to do it. But I can't. I'm working out on that one. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think the timing side bearing, that does the centre and the timing side, and the drive side just does, I think, yeah, the drive side bearing main then goes and just feeds the drive side con rod. Okay, right, and then I've got my brushes. I'll put a bit of down through the holes in the big end and the mains. I've got a small brush to go through the big ends and down. Yeah. Yeah, there's a bit coming out of that one. And remember, I did recently buy these new brushes because it's a bit of a nightmare. I came to clean this crankshaft out with my old brushes, and the brushes just disintegrated, which wasn't great, because you really don't want a brush to disintegrate on you, because it just, instead of cleaning stuff out, it actually makes it worse. Obviously, it just leaves all its bits in the oilway. So I wasn't expecting that. So obviously it's worth changing your oilway cleaning brushes every so often, because that wasn't a great experience. Suddenly finding out that I was wondering why all this stuff. I thought, there's more and more stuff in here. And what it was the brush was the actual brush was disintegrating and leaving its bristles in the oilway. I don't know. So then I had to buy new brushes and clean the whole thing out again about 10 times. Get through there. Yeah, the the drillings through the main bearings are larger diameter than through the big end, so got 2 different brushes. There we go. Right, that's pretty good. Just wipe it away. Get rid of all the residue and make sure that the journals are completely clean. Because obviously we just sprayed stuff down, and that will leave where it's washed any residue out, anything that was in there. We don't want any bits sitting on the journals that we just washed out of the holes. So they want to be pretty scrupulously clean. Right, then I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube on the journals because I don't want them going rusty. Because now I've cleaned them, there's nothing to protect them. On the other hand, the problem we got is I put too much on or whatever, then it's going to attract dust. And so it's one of those that we need to get the big ends on relatively soon, because the longer these aren't covered by the actual big ends, then by the conrods, then they're going to just this by putting the assembly lube on. The assembly lube is going to attract dust and or worse, bits of grit. No, don't even say that. So I'm putting it on because we need to protect the journals, but be mindful that we want to get as little dust on them as possible before we get the big ends. So we need to get the big ends on fairly soon, and of course the mains. We'll probably clean the mains again, maybe before we fit them in the casing, because they will have attracted dust. Because it'll be a while before we get to fitting those the crankshaft into the casings. A couple of days at least. Okay, we've done them. Right, next we're going to put the new grub screws or locking screws, what do we call them? I'm going to put them in the end of the oilways. We're going to make sure they're done up some Loctite. We're not going to completely overdo the Loctite because obviously we don't want that to run down and block the hole, which would be slightly counterproductive. Okay, Coke. Got the Loctite. Put a bit on the old grub screw. Introduce it into the end of the oilway and then screw it in with our Allen key. Get it in nice and tight. There we go, just make sure it's not going to come out. And then we're going to repeat that with the other two oilways. There, nice and tight, there we go. Okay, Coke. So we've done that. The grub screws are in the oilways, cleaned out and sealed up. The next job I think I'm going to do, so it's done, is I'm going to put the timing side bearing on.